Someone gave, someone donated, someone left a legacy. Generations of generous someones have helped shape Rhode Island into this amazing place we call home. How do you thank them? By leaving your own legacy. We can help.
Welcome to another segment of In Another Opinion, a public information program where our discussions are focused on the communities of color in the state of Rhode Island. I'm your host, Peter Wells. My guest today is Andrew Bramson, President and CEO of the College Crusade of Rhode Island, formerly the Children's Crusade.
Correct.
Very good. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Peter.
Oh, our pleasure. Listen, the College Crusade's about to celebrate its 30th anniversary.
That's correct.
That's a lot of years.
It is 3 decades of great achievement.
Well, let's talk about some of that achievement. How does the College Crusade actually assist youngsters?
Sure. So the College Crusade is a college access and success program, and our mission is to prepare and inspire young people to become the first in their families to attend and complete college.
Is that a prerequisite, first in the family?
No, it is not.
Okay.
It is not. We serve students that are first generation, first in family, or students that identify as low income based on certain income eligibility criteria.
Sure.
But we work with families starting as early as the 6th grade, and we work with them through their middle school years, high school years, and help them get into college, get as much financial aid as possible. And during those middle school and high school years, we work one-on-one with students to help them in a variety of ways so they can really plan for and succeed in getting into college, and when they get to college, succeed on that college campus.
Well, starting at that's a 6th grade. I mean, that's a long time to start beginning the trek.
Sure. No, a lot of college access programs don't really start until high school. I think our program is different in that regard, and that's based on both 30 years of experience as well as research that shows that if you really want to have an impact, if you really want to change the trajectory of somebody in terms of education, that really 6th grade is that pivotal year, both in terms of academics as well as in terms of social and emotional development. And so we're thrilled that we can work with families starting in the 6th grade because we think that those middle school years are pivotal.
How do you identify students to participate in the program? Do they come to you? Are the school recommending them? Or?
Sure. So this is an open enrollment type of program, in that as long as you meet either the income eligibility requirements or you identify as a first generation student and you live in the communities that we serve and attend the schools that we serve, you can join the program. Because we've been around for 3 decades, people know us, and so it's one of these things where we find that families tend to find us. We work closely with schools to sort of put out recruitments. We have a lot of siblings, cousins of, I was in the Crusade, now my son or daughter or my brother and sister is now in the 6th grade. It's time for them to join the College Crusade, and so we really are able to recruit the number of students that we have the capacity to serve.
And how many is that per year?
So we serve about 4,200 students a year.
Wow.
Which is a lot for Rhode Island. And we're serving students presently in Providence, Pawtucket, Central Falls, Cranston, Woonsocket, and in West Warwick. And we serve both students that attend traditional public schools as well as charter schools, and in some cases we serve students in private schools as well, as long as they meet the eligibility criteria. And so that 4,200 is a big number. It allows us to really feel like we're having impact both at an individual level and to create a ripple effect for families, but also to feel like we're having impact at the community and neighborhood level.
Well, that 4,200 would suggest you must have a very large staff.
Yeah, so we have 50 full-time staff and about 70 part-time staff. So that's a decent-sized staff.
Oh, it is.
The majority of our full-time staff are advisors. So these are young professionals that are working one-on-one with students, and they are assigned to either 1 or 2 schools, whether at the middle school level, at the high school level. Over the past couple of years, we have also had advisors work directly on the college campuses, which is something that didn't happen before. And that was sort of an evolution of the program in that we used to think that as long as we got students to graduate from high school and we could send them to college, we could drop them off at college and everything would be okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
over time, we've learned that in some cases our students, once they get on that college campus, they really need us more than ever. And so we've been able to raise the resources to make sure that we have college advisors on a couple of college campuses, in particular the Community College of Rhode Island College, and the University of Rhode Island.
Well, it's interesting you state that, and that I used to was employed for the Department of Veterans Affairs, and of course we had veterans going to school as they returned, and we found the same thing about 15 years ago to put advisors on campus because, as you say, once they got to school, there were still needs.
Yes, the needs are. But what's interesting is that once a student is in college and they're moving into adulthood, their needs are very different than what they are in high school. And what we found was that by the time our college students were reaching out to us, they should have been reaching out to us a little bit, before that time. Sure. And so we really had to be able to be responsive, almost, on call to help them navigate issues of what it's like to be the first in their family on a college campus.
Wow. Now, is there any cost directly to the students?
No. So we are 100% funded through both public government grants as well as private donations and contributions. And so there's no charge to families. Unfortunately, there's enough cost to higher education just funding it that they're able to attend and participate in our program at no charge to them.
No, that's true. In fact, that answers my other question. How are you funded? And it's through grants and donations.
Yeah, so we are funded through a large federal grant, which is called the Gear Up Grant, which is a national college access program, and
okay.
We've been funded through that grant in a partnership with the state of Rhode Island for almost 2 decades, and that provides the bulk of our funding. The General Assembly has been very generous with us in terms of funding, and then we have really key local funders. The Rhode Island Foundation has been an incredible supporter of the organization. We just won the Community Leadership Award this past year from the Rhode Island Foundation.
Yeah.
Thank you. And the United Way, Champlin, and other corporate foundations
Sure.
have been really supportive.
Well, you always have to ask this question, the metrics. How successful have you been?
So what's great about the work that we do is because we serve so many students, we actually have the ability to look at data from a wholesale perspective. Obviously, the individual stories, the anecdotes are really important and wonderful, and so we always know that we have great individual stories. We now have 6 elected officials in the state of Rhode Island that are Crusade alumni. We have 2 judges who are Crusade alumni. This past year, one of our Crusade alumni became our first veterinarian, and she's going to be speaking at our 30th anniversary gala event. So on the individual level, we know we have those. But we've been doing a large-scale evaluation, a research project with evaluators from Drexel University in Philadelphia for 12 years, and they have been able to follow almost 1,000 students year over year from the 6th grade all the way through college and compare those students to really students just like them, with the exception of that they did not participate in the College Crusade. And so what that data is showing, and this is independent data, we know that our students are 14% more likely to graduate from high school than their peers. They're 32% more likely to enroll in college and 35% more likely to persist or return for a second year of college. And that is really, that's been great numbers that have been independently verified and published in the research.
Very good. I mean, just a quick note, is the Crusade in other states?
Yes, so our organization as a nonprofit operates just in Rhode Island, but because of the federal Gear Up program, there are similar programs around the country. Every state runs it a little bit differently, but there are programs really in almost about 40 other states. And this is actually really helpful to us because it allows us to learn from our partners in Massachusetts and in Vermont and even in Montana about how they're approaching their challenges with serving communities of color in the world of college access.
Do you get together maybe annually and have a conference or
We
something?
do. We get together twice a year, once in the winter and once in the summer. And these are big convenings of about 1,500 people.
Oh, I would think.
And so it's a really great opportunity to share successes and learn from each other.
You mentioned some of your students that have graduated and become successful in their careers. Have you had giving back kinds of things? Have the students come back to be counselors or advisors, as you call them?
Yeah, so this past year, a third of our Crusade advisors were Crusade alumni, which is great.
Yeah.
And about a quarter of them were actually working in the middle school or high school that they attended as a student. And so obviously the alumni component is great, but I would say that even more critical is when you can have an advisor who is working in a school that they attended. They feel comfortable in the school. They have great relationships with teachers. I think of one of our advisors right now. His name is Mike Neal, and he is the advisor at Shea High School in Pawtucket. He went to Shea, and so when he sits that he met with his freshmen last week, and he can say, I know exactly how you're feeling. I was a freshman at Shea High School in 2008, so I know exactly what you're going through, and we're going to work through this together. That's really important, Peter.
Oh, it is. It definitely is. And I misspoke and said counselors, but basically they're kind of like guidance counselors.
Yeah. So they're it's this interesting relationship in that they are not a teacher. They're not a guidance counselor. They're sort of this, in between a mentor and somebody that can really advise them. And so what that means is that our students really forge this relationship with advisors that they don't really have. They're not family, but they're not really school officials. And so they really sort of fill this interesting sweet spot where they can really become trusted confidants and advisors around what it's going to take to get into college and to succeed.
Well, I'll tell you, when I was in school, I wish we had some advisors like that. I had guidance counselors that today wouldn't make the grade. Quite frankly, they would tell me as an African American young man that, you're not going to go to college, and you're not going to be able to do this, and you can't do that, and therefore, think about a labor job. Had I listened to that person, I probably would be just doing a labor job, which is important, but I had more potential.
Sure. So that's the great thing about our advisors, because our advisors have had a similar lived experience than with similar to the experience that the students are having. When those students encounter those types of remarks, and they're still happening.
I know they are.
When they encounter those remarks, our advisors can say, "Don't listen to that," or pivot in another direction. There are way more opportunities for you to succeed in the world of post-secondary education than you realize, than the schools realize. And so we help them sort of tune that out and push through and provide them the most accurate and motivating information that we can.
I was real fortunate. My mom was a school teacher and eventually retired as a guidance counselor. So I was getting guidance from home, which was obviously a lot different than what I was getting in the school. But I know it still happens. I have grandchildren, and one who has come back and said the same thing when she was living in New York. Now she's in Connecticut, and she gets a whole different story.
Sure.
So it's geographic, it's cultural, and it's community based.
Sure. Well, an interesting thing is, so obviously, first and foremost, we're a student-driven organization. We serve 4,200 of them, but it's important also to mention, Peter, our advisors. They're young professionals. Many of them, while they're working with us, they're going to grad school. And then what they're doing is they're getting real workforce training. And what ends up happening is our advisors are now becoming the next generation of teachers and guidance counselors working in those schools. We talk about the need to make sure that students have teachers and guidance counselors that look like them. We are really helping to sort of fuel that pipeline.
Absolutely.
And so our advisors are now working in those settings. And so, one day, when our kids are sitting here, they're going to be talking about, how the workforce, the teaching and guidance counselor workforce, how it looks different in the future than it is right now.
Yeah, that's very true. How were the schools chosen?
So, the way the schools have been chosen is we've been focusing on, so when the organization started 30 years ago, we were a statewide organization, thus the name, the College Crusade of Rhode Island. And interestingly enough, the model was that we started in the third grade and we were statewide. And first of all, the College Crusade, we were talking about, Rhode Island really deserves a lot of credit here and the people that started this organization 30 years ago. We were talking about the importance of college access when really very few states were using this type of language. But what happened was we realized over time with data that being statewide and serving, starting in the 3rd grade, we were serving like 9,000 students at a time, and we ended up being a mile wide and an inch deep. And we really felt like we needed to have a much deeper intervention. We talked about the importance of depth, dosage, and duration. And what we did was we modified the program about 12 years ago and changed it from the 3rd grade to the 6th grade and said, we're going to focus on those communities that have the greatest needs collectively in terms of college access and success. And that drew us to the urban core communities. Over the past couple of years, we have started to broaden that. 2 years ago, we went to West Warwick because it's the urban core demographics are changing in a lot of communities, especially communities of color. When they have economic mobility and success, the first thing that they're doing is they're moving really outside of it.
Sure.
So we've broadened that, and so we're working with those communities. We first go to the traditional public schools in those communities where most of our students have been, but we've also made a very strong and intentional pivot to charter schools because of the growth that they're having.
Yeah, the charter schools are interesting. I'm a product of public school.
As am I.
And my children actually went to private school, and I've seen kind of the two. And as I said, my mom was in the field of education, but charter schools I think are filling a void that public schools are leaving. And I'm an advocate of education, so I don't care whether you get it in public school or whether you get it in a charter school. But it seems to me that the world's moving more toward the specialization and the charter school.
Sure. The reason the way we see it is that we are going to meet students where they are and support them wherever their families are. And if that's in a traditional school, great. If that's in a charter school, that's fine. If it's in a private school, we have the flexibility to sort of work across those streams, and that's what makes us both unique in the world of local education. But I think it's what also makes us incredibly successful.
Yeah, I could see where it would. Well, did you have a chance to review the Johns Hopkins study of the Providence school system?
Yes, I did.
What's your take on that as it relates to the Crusade?
It's a great opportunity for an organization like ours. We've obviously have had a very strong working relationship with the Providence Public Schools. We have 1,400 Crusaders attending Providence schools this year alone. So it's our largest district. What I think, and I've talked with the new commissioner about this, and that it is, and I've been in Rhode Island for 18 years. So I came in, after the report in the 90s that people refer to. It feels like this is going to be different. It feels like in the past, we always knew that these issues were there. We always knew those issues were there. But what would happen, Peter, is that people would say, well, there's pockets of good work happening here and good things are happening at this school. And we would allow ourselves to use those, a little bit of good news here and a little bit of good news here to sort of mask the larger issue.
Sure.
I think with the Hopkins report and the way the commissioner is approaching this, it gives parents and students the license to say, just because it's working over there for some doesn't mean that it's working for everybody. And we now have momentum to say we've got to fix the system as a whole. And we're really looking forward to being a part of that solution.
So you mentioned the new superintendent.
The new commissioner.
Commissioner, rather. Is she familiar with the Crusade?
Absolutely. So we were fortunate enough that one of our signature events every year is our college signing day, which is, college signing day in the world of college athletics is a big deal. And so a national movement started by Michelle Obama several years ago was to create a college signing day that when students would announce where they were going to college just as an attendee. And so we've been doing a college signing day for a few years. And this year we did it at the State House. And the commissioner had just started. It was her first week. But she was gracious enough to come and address our students. And boy, talk about hitting the ground running. And so she's been able to see our students. And then we've had a couple of really positive conversations since then.
Well, this is probably a stretch, and I shouldn't put this on you, but it seems like this program should be expanded even more.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that
you should be part of the school system.
Well, it's
the model?
interesting. It's interesting. You know, there's the beauty of being a nonprofit. First of all, we have the flexibility and nimbleness to sort of do things in a way that schools can't.
Okay.
So it is about it's that type of public-private partnership that we think is really pivotal. But we do know that the demand outsees the supply. That if we're serving 4,200 students this year, what would it take to get to 6,000, 7,000 students? I think that we are certainly willing to sort of grow that. But you also have to remember, Peter, that because we serve students starting in the 6th grade and we have this relationship with them, let's assume that they go through college. This is an 11-year relationship.
Yes.
It's a very long, meaningful relationship that when we're going to scale or where we're going to scale, we have to know that we're going to have partnerships that are going to stand the test of time. People come and people go, but the relationship still needs to be there. But we're very motivated about looking to scale, and that includes going deeper in the communities that we already serve, as well as going to new communities. There are real college access challenges outside the urban core, in the suburbs of Rhode Island, and we're excited to be there as well eventually.
Well, I just when I made that statement, I'm thinking of the model. Maybe guidance counselors' days are over, and we should have more advisors in schools that meet the similar criteria. Now, I understand that the schools are tied to the federal government, and therefore there's certain, but that can be changed.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, what's interesting about it is that there are guidance counselors, and they sort of tend to have a traditional role around academic advising. And then we have school psychologists, and not enough of them. But we have school psychologists that really should be helping students with their social and emotional needs, and working with students that are differently abled, students with disabilities. But there's really a sort of a third leg of that the third leg of that stool, that is, that I'm always saying school, in which, how do you take this confluence of academic enrichment, social and emotional development, career education, and post-secondary prep, and we really think that those partnerships can exist by the sustaining and the expanding of our model.
Well, I'm glad I know you're thinking about it. I'm glad you're thinking about it, but I could see a bigger role in the model in public schools. It's definitely needed. Yeah. I noticed that from your credits that you're on the Governor's Workforce Advisory Committee. How is that working with what you're doing at the Crusade and what's happening in the schools?
So it's interesting. Thanks for asking. So it's the Career Advisory Committee for the Governor's Workforce Board, and it's been great to be the representative of community-based organizations on that group. A lot of that group is looking at career education in middle school and high school. And historically, when we've talked about career education, which is really the renaming of vocational education, there used to be a mindset of, well, there's vocational education and there's college, and those are two separate pathways. And the reality is that those are really coming together. That anybody that is going into any type of manufacturing position or even a trade, that there is ultimately going to be a post-secondary component to it. There are very few family wage, self-sustaining jobs that you can do with just a high school diploma. There's always going to be some type of subsequent education, and in most cases that's going to be working through some type, either directly through a college bachelor's degree or some type of certificate. So being in that group allows me to sort of talk about the importance of college. The college has gotten really expensive, obviously.
Sure.
And as a result, some people are saying, well, is a college degree still worth it? And the data still shows that a college degree, the right college degree and well-financed, is still the best pathway toward self-sufficiency. And it's a middle-class strategy. And so being around that table has been really helpful.
Yeah, I grew up in Springfield, Massachusetts, after New York, where I was born. But we had an interesting setup in Springfield back in the 60s. We had different high schools that focused on different disciplines. We had a trade school that was for nursing, auto mechanics, even barbershops and salon hairdressers. We had commerce, which was strictly secretarial and business related. We had classical, which was obviously college prep, and we had tech, which I went to, which was more math and sciences. But you chose the school based on where you thought you were going, and if you met the minimum standards at that time, you could attend the school of your choice. And if they didn't have what you wanted, we had somewhat of an open campus because the schools were close in proximity. You could walk across the street and take Russian at classical, or take calculus at tech.
Sure. So here's what we, and here's how we approach this issue. When we have young people and people say they're going to college, instinctively people ask the first two questions: well, where are you going, and what are you majoring in?
Right.
And very few people actually work in what they're ultimately college major. My major was in natural resource ecology, and I'm running a college access organization. What was your undergraduate degree in?
Economics.
Okay. A little bit better, but the practical reality is that most people don't end up working in their major.
Yeah, and that was purely by accident.
And so what we are saying to students when it comes to either their high school selection or their college is, don't worry about, you don't have to pick a career when you're 17.
Right.
You don't, just get into the best school you can from a rigor perspective and from a fit perspective. And don't worry about trying to, plan the rest of your life when you're 17. Let me tell you a quick story that really resonated with me. So this was about a year ago. I was talking with a young woman. She was a junior in high school, really brilliant. And I said, well, what do you want to do? And she said, well, I'm really interested in nanotechnology, nanobiology. I said, that sounds great. And first generation student, first generation immigrant family. And I was talking to the mother. And the mother said, my daughter can go to college anywhere she wants as long as it's in Rhode Island. And I said, okay, we'll talk about that. And she said, and she can study anything that she wants as long as she becomes a nurse. And I said, okay, we can talk about that. Now, don't get me wrong. The nursing profession is a fabulous profession.
Sure.
But a lot of the families that we're serving, becoming a nurse represents incredible economic mobility. But sometimes our families, and this is the partnership, this is the push and pull. Mm-hmm. Sometimes our families are so concerned or motivated by, okay, what's the career going to be, that they really don't let students
be themselves.
Evolve.
I understand.
And so that's where we can sort of say, you know what, you go study nanobiology. And you don't have to do it in Rhode Island. Not that we don't love our Rhode Island schools, but it's a big wide world out there.
No, that's true. And I didn't become a minister, nor did I become a teacher. Andrew Wilson, we've run out of time, but I want to thank you for being on the show.
It was really my pleasure.
And today, besides today's guest, Andrew Ramsden, I'd like to thank you, the viewers, for tuning in to another segment of In Another Opinion. A special thanks to PBS for making this program possible. I'm your host, Peter Wells. Give us your opinion on Facebook or Twitter at In Another Opinion, and have a great day.
Someone gave, someone donated, someone left a legacy. Generations of generous someones have helped shape Rhode Island into this amazing place we call home. How do you thank them? By leaving your own legacy.